Hi, this is Luke from Health and High Performance, and this video is for anyone wanting to know if they should be stretching before exercise. So there's considerable debate about whether you should stretch before exercise, and in this video we're going to discuss some of the key points in this debate and if stretching is for you. Now firstly I'll say that it very much depends on the individual and the sport that you're to participate in and whether they need to stretch. So some individuals possess amazing flexibility and therefore don't need to perform much stretching at all, and some sports and activities may not really demand large amounts of flexibility, like going out for a jog. Now secondly, you need to ask yourself, why are you stretching? Is it simply to warm up, or is it to try and gain flexibility? Before we go into the above points further, we should define a few key terms. Now, a warm-up is a process associated with elevating your core temperature and preparing your body for a training or a sport. And a cool-down is a process associated with decreasing the core temperature and reducing the neural and physiological state of the body after training or sport. Static stretching, now this is the most common type of stretching that's traditionally used, and this involves getting into a stretch position and then holding it there for a period of time, usually about 30 or 60 seconds. For example, reaching to touch your toes and holding it there. Dynamic stretching involves moving parts of your body with gradually increasing range. For example, performing a kicking action in the leg with each repetition getting higher and higher. And there's many other different types of stretching, including PNF or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation and active isolated stretching. But for the simplicity of this video, we're just going to compare the two main types of stretching mentioned before with the static and the dynamic. So which is better, static or dynamic stretching? Both can have their purposes, but dynamic stretching should be the mainstay of any form of stretching that you perform. Numerous studies have supported the use of dynamic stretching for strength and performance. In their studies, Zakaria found that the addition of static stretching to dynamic stretching offered no additional benefit for injury prevention versus dynamic stretching alone. In fact, static stretching has been shown to temporarily decrease strength immediately afterwards, although this can be mitigated by finishing with a dynamic stretch. And this was in Simick's research in 2012 and Walsh in 2017. So therefore, it's suggested to perform more dynamic movements after you've performed some static stretching. So how long should you stretch for? Well, the general consensus on the total duration of stretching to improve flexibility is that the total time of the stretch should equal about 30 seconds. However, this 30 seconds can be broken down into smaller stretching periods. So long as the total equals 30 seconds, you should get the same results. For example, you could do 6 by 5 seconds or 2 by 15 or 1 by 30, still all equal 30 and get similar results. Are there any other alternatives to improve flexibility? Well, foam rolling has been shown to be an effective way to improve flexibility, mobility, possibly without the detrimental effects that stretching can have, and this was shown in McDonald's 2013 study. What about resistance training? Well, yes, actually performance resistance training can actually have a positive effect on flexibility, and there's been a few studies to show that, especially resistance training that emphasises the eccentric or the lengthening component of a stretch. So think of a Nordic hamstring curl where you're lowering down. So do you actually need a warm-up? So the purpose of warming up is to increase the blood flow to the muscles so that you can get the maximum oxygen and nutrition delivered to there and prepare the muscles for the workload. So it's worth noting that the warm-up is not the same as a stretching. So warm-up can be performed without even containing stretching. And the current weight of evidence favours warm-ups in decreasing the risk of injury. For exercises that are power and strength based, such as sprinting, weightlifting, throwing, jumping, CrossFit, research supports the use of dynamic warm-ups to enhance power and strength performance. An example of a warm-up session may be that you firstly to elevate your core temperature with some light aerobic exercise for 2 to 5 minutes, such as light jogging or stationary bike. You can then go on to improving mobility with some dynamic stretching, foam rolling, and then some static stretching for about 5-10 minutes, and then moving on to some more sport-specific warm-ups with some drills. Do you need to cool down? Well, the cool down or the warm down is part of preparation for your next session and can aid in recovery. Interestingly, static stretching performed alone in a cool down does not reduce DOMS, or that delayed onset soreness, so it should be complemented with other activities. An example of a cool down session may be, which is actually very similar to a warm-up, light aerobic exercise for 2 to 5 minutes, like light jogging or stationary bike, improving your mobility with some dynamic stretching, foam rolling and some static stretching for about 5 or 10 minutes, and just focusing on relaxing and calming down mentally. So in summary, a warm-up can certainly aid performance, most important for power and strength activities, and it may reduce your chances of sustaining an injury. Dynamic stretching should be the mainstay of your warm-up. If you do perform static stretching, ensure that you follow it up with more dynamic movements. Generally, you don't need to spend any more than 15 minutes total on your warm and cool down, and foam rolling and resistance exercise can also be effective ways to improve flexibility. For further questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at healthhp.com.au.